"Don't kill me, cowboy." The Apache warrior promised to give him strong children. Samuel had been riding under the blazing sun for hours. The desert stretched endlessly around him, dry and harsh, with jagged rocks and sparse shrubs dotting the sand. He was used to traveling alone, as most cowboys were, but something about today felt different. The wind had a sharp edge, carrying the smell of dust and smoke, and the silence was heavy, almost as if the land itself was holding its breath. Samuel's horse, a sturdy brown mare named Daisy, seemed nervous too, stomping her hooves more often than usual. He had been sent to deliver supplies to a nearby ranch, but his path had taken him through a canyon he didn't know well. The rocky walls rose high on either side, creating shadows that twisted and moved as the sun shifted. Samuel knew that travelers often avoided this canyon, calling it dangerous, but he had been confident in his horse and in himself. Confidence was something every cowboy learned to carry like a shield, but sometimes even the most confident men were tested. As he rode deeper into the canyon, Samuel noticed something unusual. At first, it was just a glimpse of movement, a shadow slipping between the rocks. He slowed Daisy and squinted, trying to make sense of it. Then he saw him clearly, a man crouched low, his body thin but strong, with dark skin and hair that fell across his shoulders. He was dressed in leather and cloth that looked worn and practical. A long knife gleamed at his side. Samuel's first instinct was to reach for his own weapon. He had been trained to be careful. Strangers in the wild could be dangerous. But something in the man's posture, the way he held himself, gave Samuel pause. There was no anger in his eyes, no immediate threat, but there was pain. The man was wounded. Blood had soaked his sleeve, and he leaned against a rock for support. The cowboy approached cautiously, keeping his hand near his holster. "Hey there," Samuel called out, his voice calm but firm. "You okay?" The man looked up, and Samuel felt a jolt of surprise. His eyes were dark and intense, sharp like an eagle-s. Samuel had heard stories of the Apache warriors, known for their bravery and skill, and he thought he might be looking at one of them. The man raised a hand, trembling slightly, not in anger but in a plea. "Don't kill me, cowboy," the man said in English, though it was accented and broken. I can give you something, strong children." Samuel froze. The words were strange, almost shocking. He had expected a fight, maybe a demand for water or supplies, but not this. "Strong children?" he repeated, uncertain. "What do you mean?" The Apache warrior didn't answer immediately. He coughed, a rough, painful sound, and Samuel noticed how badly injured he was. His arm had a deep cut, and his leg was scraped and swollen. Samuel realized the man would not survive long without help. He weighed his options quickly. He could leave him to his fate, as many men would have done, and continue his journey. But something about the man's eyes, his courage despite the pain, stirred something in Samuel. "All right," Samuel said finally. "I'm not going to hurt you, but you need help. Can you walk?" The warrior tried to stand, but his body trembled and he nearly fell. Samuel dismounted and approached him carefully. "Here, lean on me," he said, putting his arm around the man's shoulders. He helped him to a flatter part of the canyon where he could sit safely. The man's breathing was ragged, and Samuel could see the signs of infection in the wound. He tore a strip from his own shirt and cleaned the blood gently, careful not to hurt him more. The warrior winced but didn't complain. You trust me?" he asked finally, his voice soft. "I trust you enough not to kill you," Samuel replied, trying to smile, though his stomach tightened with unease. "Now you need to survive." The Apache warrior nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on Samuel. "I am Chaska," he said, finally offering his name. I have no family now." "The fight, the white men?" His voice trailed off, heavy with pain and history. Samuel didn't interrupt. He had heard stories of the struggles between settlers and the Apache, stories of families torn apart and villages destroyed. It was a cruel world, and both men were caught in its grip. As Samuel worked to wrap the wound and make a splint for Chaska's leg, he realized the depth of what the warrior had said earlier. Strong children. Perhaps it was a promise of legacy, of survival. Perhaps it was a metaphor. Samuel couldn't be sure, but he felt the weight of it. There was wisdom in the man, something beyond mere survival. They sat in silence for a while, only the wind whispering through the canyon walls. Daisy grazed nearby, calm now, sensing that her rider was focused and careful. Samuel handed Chaska a canteen of water. "Drink slowly," he advised. The warrior obeyed, his dark eyes watching Samuel closely. Hours passed. Samuel made a small fire as the sun began to lower behind the rocks. He offered Chaska some dried meat he had in his pack. "Eat, you need your strength," Samuel said. Chaska nodded again, taking the food with trembling hands. Around the fire, Chaska began to speak more, sharing fragments of his life. He spoke of his tribe, their customs, their deep respect for the land and its spirits. He spoke of battles he had fought, of the men he had lost, of the endless struggle to survive in a world that seemed to favor the strong and ruthless. Samuel listened intently, understanding that this man was not just a fighter. He was a teacher, a keeper of knowledge that Samuel had never known. Samuel realized that he, too, was learning not from books or stories, but from a man shaped by courage and hardship. The promise of strong children was beginning to make sense. Perhaps it meant that the knowledge, the strength, the courage of one generation could pass to another, even across cultural lines, even through men like Samuel who had never known that life. Night fell and the canyon became cold. The fire crackled, and the two men sat close, not as enemies, but as survivors sharing a moment of trust. Samuel kept his hand near his pistol, a precaution more out of habit than fear. He sensed that Chaska was a man of honor, but the world they lived in was unforgiving, and one mistake could be fatal. In the quiet of the desert night, Samuel thought about his own life. He had traveled alone for years, seeking work and independence, dreaming of a life where he could make his own choices. He had never imagined that he would meet someone like Chaska, someone who would challenge his understanding of strength, courage, and legacy. Chaska looked at him, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. You help me," he said slowly. "You trust me, you strong man. Maybe my promise is true. Strong children, yes, not just of body, but of spirit." Samuel nodded, feeling the weight of the words. The promise was strange, mysterious, almost magical in a way. But he believed it. He believed that in helping Chaska survive, in learning from him, he was beginning a journey that would change both their lives forever. The night passed slowly, filled with the sounds of the desert. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the wind whispered across the rocks. Samuel watched Chaska sleep, wounded but alive, and felt a quiet respect for the warrior. He realized that sometimes trust and courage were more important than fear or anger. By dawn, Samuel had made plans. He would help Chaska reach safety, and perhaps in the process, he would learn more about this promise of strong children, about the meaning of legacy, and about the bond that could form between two men from very different worlds. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Samuel felt ready. For the first time in his life, he understood that strength was not just about fighting or surviving. It was about courage, honor, and the choices one made when faced with danger. And as the first rays of the sun lit the canyon walls, Samuel whispered quietly, almost to himself, "I don't know what this journey will bring, Chaska, but we'll see it together. And maybe I will understand your promise one day." Chaska opened his eyes slightly, a faint smile crossing his face. "Yes, together," he agreed. And in that moment, amidst the harsh rocks and the vast desert, two men from different worlds began a bond that would test them, teach them, and ultimately change them forever. The sun had barely risen over the jagged canyon walls when Samuel helped Chaska to his feet. The warrior's leg was still weak, and every step he took was painful, but he moved with a determination that amazed Samuel. Daisy stamped her hooves as if sensing the tension of the journey ahead, and Samuel patted her neck to reassure her. "You need to rest often," Samuel said, keeping his tone gentle. "We can't rush. You'll hurt yourself worse if you try to go too fast." Chaska nodded, gritting his teeth, but he would not stop. He was a man used to enduring pain, and he had survived far worse than a scraped leg. But Samuel could see that beneath the stoicism, the warrior was struggling. "I cannot stay," Chaska whispered. They will find me." Samuel understood. He had heard stories of Apache warriors being hunted relentlessly, often for reasons far beyond their control. "Then we move carefully," Samuel said. "We'll take the path along the ridge. It's slow but safer, fewer tracks, fewer chances of being seen." Chaska looked at him, a faint smile appearing despite the pain. "You help me, Cowboy, you good man." Samuel shrugged modestly, though inside he felt a deep respect for Chaska. "I just don't like seeing someone die when it can be avoided," he said. "That's all." Their journey through the canyon was slow and deliberate. Samuel supported Chaska as they climbed over rocks and carefully picked their way along narrow ledges. The canyon was both beautiful and treacherous. with cliffs dropping sharply on one side and jagged rocks threatening on the other. Chaska would often pause to catch his breath, and Samuel would scan the horizon, alert for any signs of danger. During these pauses, Chaska began to communicate more with Samuel. His English was broken, but he had a keen intelligence and a way of making himself understood through gestures and simple words. He showed Samuel how to move quietly over stones, how to avoid making a trail that could be followed easily, and how to use the shadows to conceal their presence. "You learn fast," Chaska said one afternoon, his dark eyes glinting with approval. "You strong not only body but mind." Samuel chuckled, a little embarrassed by the praise. "I just pay attention, you're the teacher here." Chaska's eyes softened. "Teacher, yes, maybe, but I learn too. From you different, not like others. You care, you survive." The two men shared a silence, one that was full of mutual respect. Samuel realized that their bond was growing stronger with every step. Despite coming from different worlds, they were learning from each other, relying on each other, and slowly trusting each other. Samuel had expected fear and suspicion when meeting the warrior, but he had found something far deeper, a connection that went beyond words. As the sun climbed higher, the desert heat grew intense. They found a shaded spot under a rocky outcrop and rested. Samuel offered Chaska more water and some dried meat. The warrior ate slowly, savoring each bite. "You generous," Chaska said, nodding slightly. "I not used to kindness like this." Samuel shrugged. "Maybe the world doesn't give much kindness, but we can." "That's all we can do sometimes." Chaska studied him, his gaze thoughtful. "You learn many things, survive, live, maybe children, strong, yes, from this." Samuel frowned slightly, trying to understand. "Strong children?" he asked. Chaska's dark eyes sparkled with something that was hard to describe, pride, hope, or perhaps wisdom. "Not only body, strong mind, strong heart, pass life, teach others, strong children. You understand." Samuel nodded slowly. He realized that the warrior's promise was not literal. It was about passing on strength, courage, and wisdom. The true meaning of strong children was deeper. It was about leaving a legacy, teaching survival, honor, and respect to the next generation. As the afternoon turned to evening, the canyon shadows grew long. Samuel and Chaska continued their journey, moving cautiously, always alert for danger. They had to avoid both natural hazards and human threats. Bandits, bounty hunters, and hostile settlers could appear at any moment, and they needed to stay one step ahead. Along the way, Samuel began to ask Chaska about his tribe. "Tell me about them," he said. "Your people, your life before the fight." Chaska hesitated for a moment, as if weighing whether to share his story. Then he spoke, his voice low but steady. "Tribe, many live, desert land sacred. Teach children, hunt, fight, survive, respect land, respect life, respect spirit. I proud tribe. Many lost, white men, soldiers, disease, take land, kill, family." Samuel listened quietly, feeling a mixture of sadness and admiration. He could see why Chaska had become a warrior, not out of desire for violence, but out of necessity to protect his people and his way of life. He understood, too, why Chaska's promise of strong children mattered so much. It was not about offspring alone. It was about passing on survival, courage, and wisdom in a world that was often cruel and unfair. The journey continued into the night. Samuel made a small fire, careful to keep it low and hidden. They ate in silence, the crackling of the fire the only sound besides the distant howl of coyotes. Chaska taught Samuel how to move quietly in the dark, how to read the terrain by the shadows, and how to listen for danger. Samuel realized that every lesson Chaska gave him was valuable, not just for survival, but for life itself. At one point, Chaska stopped and looked up at the stars. "Sky, same everywhere. My tribe, same sky, same stars. You see, same. Remember, teach children, strong, always respect life." Samuel felt a lump in his throat. The warrior's words carried weight and meaning far beyond the canyon walls. They spoke of connection, of life, and of the responsibility each person carried to protect and teach. He understood that this journey was becoming more than a rescue. It was a lesson in humanity, in courage, and in the bonds that could form between two men from different worlds. During the nights, they spoke of small things too. Samuel's memories of the ranch he had grown up on, his dreams of owning a small piece of land, and Chaska's memories of childhood games and traditions in the tribe. These conversations built trust and comfort. Samuel realized that despite the danger, despite the injuries, and despite the uncertainty of the journey, he felt alive in a way he had never felt before. He was learning, not just about survival, but about life, respect, and honor. By the third day, they had reached a higher ridge overlooking the canyon floor. The view was breathtaking, red and gold rocks stretching to the horizon, the winding river far below glinting like silver in the sun. They paused to rest, catching their breath and drinking water. "You strong," Chaska said, breaking the silence. "Not give up, help me. Many others leave, die alone." Samuel shook his head. "I'm no hero. I just don't turn away when someone needs help. You do the same for me if it were the other way around." Chaska looked at him with a hint of a smile. "Maybe, yes, we learn from each other, strong together, survive, pass, strong children." Samuel finally understood the depth of the warrior's promise. It wasn't about fear or bargaining. It was about legacy, about teaching, about strength that could survive beyond death. Chaska was offering him knowledge, courage, and lessons that could shape the future, and Samuel knew he was lucky to receive them. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in fiery oranges and deep reds, Samuel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be dangerous, and there were still many unknowns, but with Chaska by his side, he knew he could face whatever came. And more importantly, he knew that this journey was not just about survival. It was about understanding, learning, and carrying forward the strength and wisdom of a brave warrior who had chosen to trust him. The two men settled down for the night, huddled together under a natural rock shelter. Daisy grazed nearby, calm and content. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the scent of dust and earth. Samuel felt the weight of what had begun, a bond that would test them, teach them, and ultimately change them forever. In the quiet of the night, Chaska spoke softly, almost to himself. "You cowboy strong, spirit, survive, children strong, yes." Samuel lay back, staring at the stars, thinking of the promise and what it meant. He had no idea what the coming days would bring, but he was ready. He had already learned that strength was not just about the body, it was about heart, mind, and courage. And for the first time, he felt a true connection to someone outside his world, someone who could teach him the meaning of true strength and legacy. The morning air was crisp and quiet, with a faint chill that made Samuel tug his coat tighter around his shoulders. Chaska was already awake, his dark eyes scanning the horizon as if he could sense danger before it arrived. His leg was still stiff, but the warrior moved with careful precision, testing each step before committing his weight. Samuel admired him silently. Even in pain, Chaska's determination and discipline were remarkable. "We should move," Chaska said, his voice low but firm. "Many hunters follow path behind." Samuel nodded. He had suspected this already. The canyon had a narrow passage that left few options for escape, and any tracks they left could easily be followed. They needed to be clever, fast, and quiet. "Then let's go," Samuel said, helping Chaska to adjust the splint he had made on the leg. As they began moving along the ridge, Samuel realized just how skilled Chaska was. Every step was calculated. Every loose rock or patch of sand was a potential hazard. The warrior taught Samuel to place his feet softly, how to balance on uneven surfaces, and how to listen to the subtle sounds of the desert. The rustle of animals, the distant clatter of rocks, and the whisper of the wind through the canyons. "You learn fast," Chaska said, breaking the silence. "Many cowboys never see danger before it come." Samuel smiled faintly. "I've learned a few things from being out here alone, but you teach me more than I could imagine." They continued for hours, moving slowly but steadily. The sun climbed high, casting harsh shadows across the canyon, making the rocky landscape look even more menacing. Samuel could feel the heat radiating from the stones, and Chaska's breathing was labored. But neither of them complained. Survival demanded focus, and both men were fully aware of the stakes. Around midday, they came upon a narrow ledge that ran along a cliffside, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Below, the canyon floor dropped sharply, a jagged maze of rocks and desert brush. Samuel's stomach tightened as he looked down. One wrong step could be fatal. "You careful," Chaska warned, gesturing to the edge with a steady hand. "Many fall here." Samuel nodded, gripping the ledge with one hand and helping Chaska with the other. They moved cautiously, step by step, until they reached a safer plateau. The moment they stepped onto solid ground, both men exhaled in relief. It was a small victory, but in this land, even small victories were important. As they rested, Samuel noticed something that made his heart race. Faint tracks in the sand behind them. Someone was following them. He motioned for Chaska to stay quiet and crouched low to study the prints. They were fresh, probably a small group of men on horseback. Samuel's mind raced. They couldn't outrun mounted men easily, not with Chaska's injury. Chaska looked at the tracks, his expression calm but serious. "Hunters, many not good. We hide, wait, see," Samuel nodded. "We need a plan. If they find us, it won't end well." Chaska's eyes scanned the ridge. Then he pointed to a cluster of rocks leading to a narrow cave. "There, shelter, hide, wait, safe, maybe." They moved quickly but silently to the cave, slipping behind boulders to avoid being seen. Inside, it was cool and dark, a welcome relief from the burning sun. Chaska pressed his back against the wall, listening intently. Samuel could hear faint voices and the sound of hooves in the distance. "They close," Chaska whispered. "We stay, quiet, wait, they leave." Hours passed in tense silence. Samuel tried to calm his racing mind. He had never experienced anything like this, being hunted in a wilderness where survival depended entirely on caution, skill, and trust. He glanced at Chaska, who seemed completely focused, as if he could sense every movement outside the cave. Samuel realized how much he had already learned from the warrior, more than he could have imagined. As the sun dipped lower, the voices and hooves faded. The hunters had moved on, perhaps assuming that their quarry had gone another way. Samuel let out a slow breath, feeling relief flood his body. Chaska nodded silently, a small but meaningful gesture. They were safe for the moment, but both men knew the danger was far from over. When it was fully dark, they emerged from the cave, moving cautiously through the shadows. Samuel kept Daisy close, whispering to her to stay calm. Chaska led the way, his senses finely tuned to every sound and movement. The desert at night was eerie and beautiful, with the moon casting silver light over the rocks. Samuel felt a strange mix of fear and awe. "You brave," Chaska said, his voice almost a whisper. "Many others run afraid, not survive." Samuel shrugged. "I've had to learn fast." "But you teach me. I trust you." Chaska's dark eyes glinted in the moonlight. "Trust important. Without trust, die alone." They continued moving through the canyon, keeping to higher ground where their tracks would be less visible. As they traveled, Samuel noticed the warrior's remarkable ability to find water, edible plants, and small game. He taught Samuel how to read the signs of the land, to find hidden springs and identify safe plants. Every lesson was a small but vital step toward survival. One evening, as they rested near a small spring, Samuel finally asked the question he had been thinking about for days. "Chaska, why your promise? Strong children? What do you mean?" Chaska's gaze was fixed on the water, his reflection flickering in the moonlight. "Promise not only children, body, children, strong mind, heart, survive, teach, life, honor, pass, knowledge, strong children." Samuel thought about the journey so far. Every challenge they had faced, the harsh terrain, the hunters, the injuries, was a lesson in endurance and courage. He realized that Chaska's promise was not a bargain or a threat. It was a gift, a way to pass strength, wisdom, and courage to the next generation, not necessarily through blood, but through teaching, example, and character. "I understand," Samuel said softly. "It's about more than fighting or surviving. It's about living, learning, and passing on what matters." Chaska nodded. "Yes, survive, teach children, strong, yes, pass, life, honor always." The following days were a blur of careful travel, hidden paths, and small victories. They avoided open plains where hunters could see them easily, sticking to narrow trails and rocky ledges. Chaska taught Samuel how to move silently, how to listen for danger, and how to use the environment to their advantage. Samuel began to feel a new sense of confidence, not just in his own abilities, but in their partnership. One afternoon, they encountered a small band of wild animals, coyotes scavenging near a dry riverbed. Chaska gestured for Samuel to stay down, showing him how to observe without being seen. They watched the animals, learning from their movements and behaviors. Chaska whispered, "Observe, learn, survive, everything teaches." Samuel realized that survival was not just about strength. It was about awareness, patience, and understanding the world around them. He felt a growing respect for Chaska, not just as a warrior, but as a teacher and guide. By the end of the week, they had made significant progress, moving away from the canyon and into slightly safer terrain. They were tired, hungry, and wary, but they were alive. And with every step, Samuel felt the truth of Chaska's words. Strength was not measured only by the body. It was measured by courage, intelligence, honor, and the ability to help others survive. That night, as they camped under a sky full of stars, Samuel reflected on how much he had learned in just a few days. The desert had tested him, and Chaska had taught him lessons that would last a lifetime. Samuel realized that he was not just surviving alongside Chaska. He was growing stronger in every way that mattered. Chaska spoke softly as he watched the stars. "You cowboy strong, not give up, survive, children strong, yes, honor, pass, life." Samuel nodded, understanding at last the depth of the promise. It was not about immediate danger or personal gain. It was about the legacy they could leave behind, the lessons, the strength, the courage, and the honor that could survive even when they were gone. And as they lay down to sleep, with the wind whispering through the rocks and the stars shining above, Samuel felt a quiet but powerful certainty. He and Chaska were not just traveling together. They were shaping the future, creating the foundation for strong children, strong lives, and a legacy of survival and honor that could not be taken away. The morning air was heavy with the scent of dust and sagebrush. Samuel and Chaska had traveled for several days, moving carefully through narrow canyons and hidden paths, always alert to the danger that might follow. Their trust had grown stronger with every step, yet both men knew that the wilderness could be unforgiving, and the hunters who pursued them were relentless. Samuel had been thinking a lot about Chaska's promise, about the meaning of strong children and the lessons the warrior had been teaching him. Every step he took, every skill he learned, felt like a part of a greater understanding. He now realized that survival wasn't just about strength or courage. It was about wisdom, honor, and the choices one made in life. They had stopped near a small stream to rest and drink. Samuel was filling the canteens when he heard it, the sound of horses' hooves, faint but unmistakable. He froze, glancing at Chaska. The warrior's eyes narrowed, scanning the surrounding ridges. Samuel could see the tension in his posture, the same tension that had saved them countless times before. "They hunters close," Chaska whispered. "Many not good, dangerous, we prepare." Samuel's heart raced. They had managed to avoid detection for days, but now it seemed their pursuers had finally found their trail. He helped Chaska to a safer position behind some rocks, keeping low and quiet. The hunters' voices were faint but growing louder, and Samuel could sense their impatience. Whoever they were, they had no mercy. Chaska moved with careful precision, scouting a path that would give them cover and an advantage. "We trap, maybe we fight, only choice," he said quietly. Samuel nodded. He knew the warrior was right. If the hunters caught them in open ground, escape would be impossible. They needed a strategy and fast. As they crept along the rocks, Samuel noticed that Chaska was watching not just the hunters, but Samuel himself. "You ready?" Chaska asked, his voice calm but intense. Samuel swallowed hard. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said, gripping his rifle tightly. Chaska nodded, his dark eyes filled with a strange mix of pride and determination. "Good, stay strong, remember, promise, strong children, survive, learn, honor." They reached a narrow pass, where the hunters would be forced to come through in single file. Chaska whispered instructions, showing Samuel where to position himself, how to stay hidden, and when to act. Samuel followed each instruction carefully, relying on the skills Chaska had taught him over the past days. He felt a mix of fear and confidence, fear of the danger, but confidence in their plan and in the bond they shared. The first hunter appeared, cautiously moving into the pass. Samuel held his breath as Chaska signaled for him to stay hidden. One by one, the men entered, unaware of the trap awaiting them. Samuel marveled at Chaska's calmness. The warrior seemed to know exactly what would happen, even under pressure. Then chaos erupted. Chaska moved swiftly, striking with precision to disarm and confuse the hunters. Samuel followed, using his rifle to create noise and distraction while keeping Chaska protected. The sound of shouting, horses' hooves, and snapping branches filled the air. Samuel's heart pounded, but he stayed focused, remembering every lesson Chaska had taught him. In the middle of the struggle, one hunter managed to break free, lunging toward Chaska. Samuel reacted instinctively, stepping in front of the warrior and firing his rifle near the ground to scare the man back. Chaska used the moment to regain control, disarming the hunter and forcing him to flee. When the dust settled, both men were breathing heavily, their bodies tense and covered with dust and sweat. The hunters had retreated at least for the moment, but the danger was far from over. Samuel looked at Chaska, a mixture of awe and relief on his face. "You brave," Chaska said, his voice low. "Many others die afraid. You fight, strong children, yes." Samuel shook his head, still catching his breath. "We survived together. You taught me everything I know about this land and about life." Chaska's eyes softened, and for a moment Samuel saw a vulnerability that he had never noticed before. The warrior's promise, the promise of strong children, was more than words. It was a lesson in courage, in honor, and in passing knowledge and strength to others. As the sun began to set, Samuel and Chaska moved to a safer location, a small grove of trees that offered cover from the open desert. They made a fire, careful to keep it low and hidden. Samuel handed Chaska some dried meat and water, and the warrior ate slowly, still cautious but visibly calmer. "I teach you," Chaska said after a long silence. "Not only survive, teach, honor, respect, children, strong, not only blood, but spirit, courage, mind, heart." Samuel nodded. "I understand. I've been learning more than just survival. You've shown me what it means to be brave, to make choices, and to care for more than just myself." Chaska looked at him with a rare smile. "Yes, that promise, true, not only children, future, strong, survive, pass, life, honor." The night passed quietly, but the sense of danger never fully left. Both men slept lightly, listening for any signs of the hunter's return. Samuel thought about the journey so far, the harsh terrain, the lessons, the fights, and the moments of silence that had taught him so much. He realized that every experience with Chaska was shaping him into a man who could face the world with courage and wisdom. The next morning, as they prepared to move again, they noticed signs that the hunters were regrouping. Chaska studied the tracks carefully, his eyes sharp and calculating. "They follow still, must move faster, careful." Samuel helped Chaska to his feet, supporting him as they moved through a hidden path that wound through rocky hills and shaded valleys. Every step was cautious, every sound analyzed. The desert was alive with danger, but Samuel felt a growing sense of confidence. He trusted Chaska completely, and he trusted his own instincts, honed by days of learning from the warrior. Suddenly, they heard shouting from the ridge above. A small group of hunters had discovered their location, and they were moving down the slope. Chaska's eyes darkened with intensity. "We no choice, fight, survive now." Samuel's heart raced. He followed Chaska's lead, positioning himself as instructed. The hunters charged, but Chaska's strategy was flawless. He directed Samuel to create diversions, while he moved with precision to disarm and disable the men. The fight was fierce but brief, and when it was over, the hunters had been forced to retreat once again. Samuel and Chaska collapsed against a rock, breathing heavily. Samuel looked at the warrior, admiration and gratitude written on his face. "I don't think I could have done this without you," he said. Chaska shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "You strong, you learn together, survive, promise, children strong." As they rested, Samuel realized the full meaning of Chaska's words. The promise was not about immediate danger or personal survival alone. It was about creating strength that could outlast them both, passing on courage, honor, and wisdom to others. Chaska's teachings were a legacy, a way of shaping the future even in the face of danger and uncertainty. By evening, they reached a safer part of the desert, a hidden grove that offered water, shade, and protection. Samuel helped Chaska settle in, grateful for a moment of peace. He watched the warrior carefully, understanding that this bond they shared was rare and precious. Chaska spoke softly as the sun dipped below the horizon. "You, cowboy strong, survive, honor, children strong, yes, remember, always pass, life." Samuel nodded. He felt the weight of the words, their truth sinking deep into his heart. He had been tested in ways he had never imagined, but he had learned more than survival skills. He had learned courage, wisdom, trust, and the importance of passing knowledge and strength to others, the true meaning of Chaska's promise. As night fell, they slept lightly, knowing the hunters could return at any moment. But for now, they were safe, and Samuel felt a deep sense of understanding and connection with Chaska. He had survived, learned, and grown stronger, not just in body, but in mind and spirit. And in the quiet of the desert night, as the stars shone above, Samuel knew that he would carry Chaska's lessons and the promise of strong children with him forever, a legacy of courage, honor, and strength that could never be taken away. The desert morning was calm, with soft light spilling over the jagged rocks. Samuel woke first, as he often did, his mind already alert to the world around him. Chaska lay nearby, resting after the exhausting days and nights of travel and danger. Though the warrior's leg had begun to heal slowly, he was still cautious with every movement. Samuel admired him silently. Every step, every breath seemed measured, full of patience and quiet strength. Samuel knew that this journey had changed him. When he first met Chaska, he had been a young cowboy seeking adventure, unaware of the harsh realities of life beyond his small world. Now, after days of danger, lessons, and survival, he had grown in ways he could never have imagined. He understood courage, patience, and honor. He understood what it meant to protect, to trust, and to learn from someone who had endured far more than he ever could. They prepared to continue their journey, moving slowly through the hills and canyons. The hunters who had pursued them were still a threat, but the men had learned to anticipate danger. Samuel followed Chaska's lead, moving silently, observing the wind, the sand, and the shadows. Every skill Chaska had taught him over the past days had become instinct, and Samuel felt a quiet confidence he had never known before. "You ready?" Chaska asked softly, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. Samuel nodded. "I am, and I'm ready to learn more." They traveled for hours, moving through hidden paths and shaded valleys. Along the way, Chaska shared stories of his childhood, his tribe, and the lessons his elders had taught him. Samuel listened intently, realizing that these stories were more than tales. They were guidance, wisdom passed down through generations. Each story contained a lesson about strength, honor, respect, and survival. "You cowboy, listen, learn, children strong, yes," Chaska said as they paused to rest. "Not only fight, survive, but heart, mind, courage, pass, life, honor." Samuel smiled faintly, understanding at last the depth of the promise he had heard on the first day. Chaska's words were a gift, a way to pass strength beyond the limits of time, beyond the dangers of the world. He realized that these lessons were as important as any skill with a rifle or a knife. They were about becoming a man of integrity, a person who could face life with courage and pass those qualities on to the next generation. By midday, they reached a plateau that offered a breathtaking view of the desert. The sun reflected off the rocks, turning them into shades of red and gold. Samuel paused, taking in the scenery. He thought of the canyon where he had first met Chaska, the firelight at night, and the many dangers they had survived together. The journey had been exhausting, terrifying, and full of challenges, yet it had also been transformative. Chaska gestured to the horizon. "See, world harsh, but beauty, same, teach, children, strong, survive, honor." Samuel nodded, understanding that this was the ultimate lesson. The world could be cruel, full of threats and dangers beyond their control. But within it, there was beauty, wisdom, and the opportunity to teach, protect, and inspire. Chaska had shown him that true strength came from recognizing both the danger and the wonder of life, and choosing to act with honor and courage. As they moved toward the edge of the plateau, Samuel noticed signs of human activity, tracks that were fresh, but not from the hunters who had pursued them earlier. Chaska studied the tracks carefully, his eyes narrowing. Others, travelers, may be safe, maybe learn, test, trust. Samuel trusted Chaska's judgment completely. They followed the tracks cautiously, eventually coming upon a small group of travelers resting near a spring. Chaska approached them slowly, communicating carefully. Samuel watched as the warrior navigated this encounter with the same wisdom he had shown throughout their journey, calm, respectful, and careful. The travelers welcomed them cautiously, offering food and water. Samuel realized that despite all the danger and hardship, moments of kindness and connection still existed in the world. He drank deeply, savoring the cool water and feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Chaska spoke quietly to the travelers, teaching them some survival techniques, just as he had taught Samuel. That evening, Samuel and Chaska made camp near the spring. Samuel helped Chaska settle down, careful not to strain the warrior's leg. As the fire crackled, they spoke quietly about the journey so far and what lay ahead. "You, cowboy, strong, learn, survive, honor, promise, children, strong, yes," Chaska said, his eyes reflecting the firelight. Samuel nodded, feeling the truth of the words deeply. "I've learned so much from you, Chaska, not just how to survive, but how to live with honor, courage, and respect. I will carry these lessons with me always, and I will teach them to others just like you taught me." Chaska's face softened, and for the first time, Samuel saw a look of peace on the warrior's face. Yes, promise, true, not only children, but future, strong, past life honor. The two men lay quietly under the stars, reflecting on everything they had experienced. Samuel thought about the canyon, the hunters, the dangers, and the lessons learned. He realized that he had changed in ways he could never have predicted. He had grown stronger, wiser, and more aware of the responsibilities that came with survival and courage. Days passed, and Samuel and Chaska eventually reached a safer area, far from the hunters and the dangers of the canyon. Samuel helped Chaska return to his tribe, where the warrior could reconnect with his people. The reunion was quiet but meaningful, and Samuel felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that he had played a part in Chaska's journey back to safety. Before parting ways, Chaska turned to Samuel. You cowboy promise, remember, strong children, yes, pass life honor always. Samuel nodded, understanding fully the depth of the promise. I will, Chaska, I will teach others just as you taught me. Your lessons, your strength, your wisdom, they will live on. As Samuel watched Chaska disappear into the horizon with his tribe, he felt a mixture of emotions, relief, gratitude, and a profound sense of purpose. He knew that the lessons he had learned would guide him for the rest of his life. He would teach his children, apprentices, and anyone willing to learn the values Chaska had shared: courage, honor, respect, and the true meaning of strength. Samuel returned to his own world, the desert now behind him, but the lessons ever present. He became a respected man in his community, known not just for his skill as a cowboy, but for his wisdom, patience, and integrity. Children and young cowboys sought him out, eager to learn the skills and values he had acquired from the Apache warrior. Samuel shared the stories of survival, respect for the land, and the importance of courage and honor. Years later, Samuel often visited the canyon where he had first met Chaska. He would sit quietly, thinking about the journey, the dangers they had faced, and the lessons he had learned. The canyon had changed him, and Chaska's teachings had left a permanent mark on his life. Samuel felt the presence of the warrior still, not in person, but in the wisdom and strength that lived within him and the children he had taught. He realized, finally, the full meaning of Chaska's promise. Strong children were not only those born of blood, they were the ones who carried courage, wisdom, and honor forward. They were the ones who learned to survive, to respect life, and to teach others. Through him, Chaska's legacy would continue, shaping lives far beyond the desert canyon. Samuel smiled as he watched the sunset over the red rocks, feeling a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and dangerous, but it had taught him the most important lesson of all. Strength is not measured only by survival, but by the courage to live honorably, the wisdom to teach others, and the legacy one leaves behind. And in that quiet moment, Samuel whispered softly, as if speaking to the wind itself, "Thank you, Chaska, for everything. Your promise, your lessons, your strength will never be forgotten." The desert was silent except for the whispering wind, carrying Samuel's words across the canyon. Somewhere, Chaska's spirit lingered, watching over the land and the legacy of strength he had promised. And Samuel knew that as long as he remembered, taught, and lived by those lessons, Chaska's promise of strong children would continue forever, through courage, honor, and the enduring power of wisdom passed from one generation to the next.